keep you guys all waiting. Today, Keith's not going to be here today. He has to go to a shoot.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that we have a replacement, Mr. Andrew Davis.
How's everyone?
Yeah. So,
Glad to see a lot of familiar faces.
so I see there's a couple of new people. Omar, go here on the
first
first
one, yeah, I can do the last two. I wasn't here for the second one. I was
Yeah.
out on Pete, and then last week I would have come in very, very
Yeah.
late. So sorry.
And Christine, Jess, and Carm, yes. Carmel, I was gonna say Carmel.
It's my first
Carm,
one.
it's your first one. So, just to kind of give you some background of what we did last week. Last week we talked about, what visual communication was all about. And we talked about typographic hierarchy in terms of how do we read information, and talking about leading the eye from top to the bottom, left and right, using typographic elements, grouping information, and functional typography. So prior to that, we started off from the really principles, talking about basic letter forms, from kerning, leading, tracking, and then to word spacing with paragraphs and then grids and all that. So now today we're going to be talking a little bit more about typography on web, what are web fonts, fonts on tablet, mobile, watch, and some key takeaways from this whole 4-course workshop. So before we jump into today's web stuff, we'd like to do a little recap on what we did last week on some of the exercises we did. So last week we pretty much got newspapers and pretty much did arts and crafts, cut our headlines and body type, and try to recreate either an ad or a poster utilizing some of the things that we talked about. Either the hierarchy, using color, and kind of controlling the eye. So when you guys look at this, pretty much opening up to everybody, which ones do you feel that when we're talking about using white space and balance and structure and all that, which ones do you find work well compared to others?
I like the issues and ideas.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar to what Kayla has done, that the white space will ultimately maybe be for imagery, but very simple to read.
Yeah.
And just enough copy to support what the article is about, and then if you have to read more, put it back in the book. Or scroll down on your tablets and phones.
Like Carlos, the one you're working on, I think I like the idea where you're trying to create that almost image with a type. Right now when I look at it, I'm just having trouble trying to figure out the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking at the slow first, but then my eye wants to jump down to where it says price tag troubles.
Yeah.
So I'm having a little bit of a struggle there.
Yeah, the sizes were too similar.
Okay, yeah.
That's true.
Kayla, I like what you were doing there. It's a good use of space, of the negative space. That I feel that big chunky text on the top left-hand corner, it's quite balanced with the body copy. But at the same point, you know exactly where to read from that word toast, the palatable toast, and then your eye comes all the way down.
Yeah.
I think that's quite effective. Amy, what do you think?
I like the Burks one.
The first one?
No, the Burks one.
Oh, the birds. That's awesome.
That was a fun. Very
Yeah.
creative.
Yeah.
She broke the rules.
Yeah.
That was,
I like the rules being broken. It doesn't show hierarchy really, but
It's almost like type as an illustration.
yeah.
artistic approach.
For
Yeah.
sure. Even like the rips are like, I like it.
The
Someone's-
terrace on purpose.
Yeah. the
David
color.
Carson-esque when we were talking about David Carson.
Yeah.
It's hard to cut your way to glory, so she tore it.
Christine, what do you think about that one where it was filled with that texture there?
Good.
The second one on the right.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I didn't know. I was doing a different one. That one's cool. I like the texture in the back. It's different from the rest. I mean, I guess the texture would be the white space in a way, but
Mhm.
it's also a little more playful, I guess.
it's funny just using that texture. If you squint your eyes, like that texture almost becomes a gray. You know, like you're not really meant to read the texture, but it's just an interesting way to create a separate layer or color just using type.
It kind of reminds me of that campaign for, I think it's the Cleveland House, where there's subway ads and quick far away, and it's like, you know, why are these kids homeless? And the type is so small and the story fills out. So, I mean, at first, you know, you're looking at it, you're like, I can't read the story, and you're like, oh, right, because that's the total message, is that these are the reasons why a kid is homeless or a man is homeless. It's not just because of the stereotypes, there's more behind it. So, I mean, if the headline was saying something, you know, kind of along the lines and, you know, big picture statement, and then that's list of reasons, I think that's kind of neat too.
Lucy, what do you think about the one that says absolute chance last?
With the plastic?
Yeah, the maroon in there.
I guess it's kind of, it's laid out a lot like how editor will be laid out, some of the other ones are more like, unusual, but, yeah, I guess the kind of book and it's one at the top for the public kind of draws your eye for a title. I guess they did like right align it, so it's kind of different.
I'm not sure if it was done on purpose, even the title is where it says absolute chance last. It's not something that you would read normally. You probably would read absolute last chance or something. Do you find that kind of catches your attention a little bit just by the way, by the copyright per se in this one? Because we talked about using like flush right versus flush left to center type, and we're seeing, you know, when can we use flush right, you know, like when is it appropriate? I think in this circumstance, I think it works really well because it really draws out to, like it really creates some hierarchy where you can see the rag on the left, which creates some visual interest. And obviously, I think the color and the size of the type, even though it's very thin, it does have a lot of impact.
And I think for me, the reason that works is because the rest of it, like if you look at the size of the fonts and the positioning of everything, it's very traditional. And so the fact that they did the headline that way makes it kind of stand out.
I agree. So I would say out of all of them, that one is probably the easiest to read. You know, like when you say traditional, like what you said, Karan, I feel like it just seems right, and
It's
you
the
don't
one
have a
that
hard
drew my
time.
attention the most, actually. Maybe it's because that's what I'm used to seeing, and so that I'm
That's a
kind
good
of
thing.
conditioned
That's
to
a
it.
really good thing.
And so that was the one that I actually was drawn to first when I first just scrolled across with my eye.
And you know what's interesting? That one was done, I think Shay did that one. So that's from a project manager, so which is very interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of how I think too. That's why
that's
it's
good.
kind of funny when you say that.
Yeah. So, sorry. Margaret. Hi. So we're just talking about some of the stuff we did last class when we're talking about hierarchy, and we used newspaper clippings to cut out headlines and type and all that. And we're just talking about, you know, which ones are more effective than others, which ones are easier to read, which is more artistic. So I've just been asking people's opinion. What do you think about the third one from the left?
The third one from the left?
Yeah.
The headline?
No, it's just the whole page layout,
the layout.
layout, color, font size. There's a
I
hierarchy.
don't know what to look at.
Yeah. You think it's pretty tough? Tough to look at?
It's a
Like,
mess.
I don't know what the main one is that I'm supposed to look at.
Yeah.
Like, is it whose is it? Oh, is it?
Good question.
I don't know which is the headline, right?
All right, so
Like, 30
for the record,
aristocrat, somersault off lemon.
so for the record, I had just cut up a newspaper and I stuck it back together, and it's a very reputable newspaper. So You can't blame me.
No, no.
It was actually,
What do you have to
I wanted
work
to
with?
test you guys to see, you know.
But
if
isn't
you-
summer sell-off the ad?
Okay, that was. That was like, you know,
I love you, Sally, but I don't want to look at it.
if I,
to be here.
I didn't even stick that together. Two stuck together. I gave up on it.
It's true though.
But look how much I got.
Talk to the newspaper.
Yeah, look how much I got accomplished. The one on the right, the far left, only has like four things stuck on it.
Which one? The one right beside it?
What's that?
You know that Toronto has arrived in the
Right,
first one.
good.
No need to say anything.
Awesome. Really good.
Eddie,
There's some nice stuff in
what do
there.
you think about the one that says burden? The one, pretty much a center one.
There's one.
Yeah, the small one there.
What do I think about
Yeah, yeah, just
That was very,
overall
that was very
consensus.
sneaky, wasn't it?
No, we're talking, it's open forum.
From here, I just see burden, and then
Yeah.
there's 2 columns of text.
Mhm. So do you find that, so obviously this one uses a lot of white space. So imagine it being in a newspaper or a magazine where it's filled with ads and content. Do you find that maybe this one would actually say more with using a lot less?
I mean, that's the only headline, and if that's the only foreign thing looking in terms of like how it's set up, and it's just, if it's crowded with all these ads,
Mhm.
then yeah, that would stand out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think with this one, it's more of like,
The black box and the white font really pops, you know what to look at right
Yeah.
away, it's bigger than everything else, it's like, it's from the top down.
it kind of just draws your eye
Yeah,
in, like
it's
it
easy.
creates your attention, you'd be like, oh, what is this about? So I think why I wanted to call this one out was to say that, you know, sometimes you don't have to be overtly loud and using something that's really bold
Like
to
that.
command attention, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you can still be very soft and use a lot of negative space, but still create that impact. So cool.
You see that blue one, I like that one.
What's that?
I like that version.
Yeah, the burn was nice. So moving on, so today, you know, we're going to be talking about web, like what I talked about. So who used one of these back in the day? Did? Not a lot of people, eh? Wow. No? Christine, you guys used? You didn't use that? Really? Wow.
Not for design.
Well, I guess.
I was probably, what, in elementary school.
Yeah.
What? I was in university.
University, come on. And I think we're playing like, you know, we're in the world's Carmen Sandiego on it and all those games.
Pioneer one where you died of dysentery.
It came in, it loaded, it had that screen, it had a happy face. But
I certainly know that.
you can imagine, you know, back in the day when we were using these computers, whoever used it, it was like all the fonts and all that were really bitmapped because it was a 8-bit computer. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was an 8-bit computer. Okay. So, you know, a lot of the fonts were kind of like that, to be honest. So if you were to use, say, like Jensen or Garamond on a print ad, and you wanted that translated onto this computer, I remember that the typographer actually had to go and really modify the type, and something that looked really elegant could end up looking something as rough as this, or like, because they had to make sure that there were only X amount of pixels per letter. Through the evolution of type, I remember, depending on how many pixels there were in each letter form, that made the size of the font larger. And then there was this whole stage where they couldn't create something that was really aesthetically pleasing based on we didn't have the capabilities of actually doing it. And then as time passed, they were able to solve that issue where they're able to make sure that you can create smooth curves at the same point, keeping the file size down so that we came up to more legible type. So we came from a time from then, so nowadays, we have stuff that, lives on, screen, either it be on your tablets or on your phone, and obviously based on functionality, there are certain fonts that work better and fonts that don't work as well. You go from that to, small things from an Apple Watch, and then even stuff in terms of like Google Glass, so as you can see, the evolution of type and all the different platforms has evolved throughout the years. So because I'm no expert in web fonts and all that, I brought Andrew, who specializes in digital, to give us a little more information.
Believe it or not, web fonts are actually relatively new. The way we dealt with them before, you saw a lot of type experimentation when Flash was really popular on the web, and that kind of drove a lot of the rich media content and interacting with video, and when all those Adobe plugins were sort of baked into the browser. And then along came the iPhone and pretty much killed Flash. And so what was born out of that about 5-ish years ago were web fonts, and the ability to have everything that was available to desktop publishers, people working in print and film and things like that, onto the web and across all devices from desktop to tablet to mobile, as your previous screen showed. One of the first sort of type foundries was Typekit, which was born from just 3 digital designers that were kind of frustrated with the way type was being treated. There was a few hacks in the early days of web fonts where you made everything cross-browser, so it worked in Chrome and Firefox, Internet Explorer, but what it was doing was substituting fonts for Flash files. And so it would break, like if you use like a beautiful headline that you see here, each of these would be defaulted to Flash if the browser couldn't support that type that was loaded into the code. And so from that, these guys got together and formed Typekit, which Adobe eventually absorbed a couple of years later into their Creative Cloud system. And so from there, it kind of, as you can see in this picture, it sort of bridged that digital gap. Like you're able to work in Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign, and while you're adjusting in InDesign, you can actually see that design take place through Creative Cloud on your devices. So you're adjusting your type right across every device that you have. I don't have a Typekit membership, but if you have a subscription to Adobe Cloud, I highly recommend it, and especially if you don't sort of have an allegiance with fonts.com, which I use, and I'm going to kind of show after the process that I use in sort of selecting a web font and bringing it into my designs and things like that. But Typekit was the first, and it was kind of born out of necessity, just like a lot of these things were, and the way type sort of was evolutionized on computers as a tool to deliver graphic design.
It's not specific just to web fonts, right? Typekit?
No.
Just across the board.
Typekit is just kind of its own repository. Am I mixing things up? It's a foundry of partners that have been developing type for, since movable type came about just after the age of the Baroque, right? So you'll get anything from the Adobe catalog that's been available over the years. And then they're always making new fonts, and it's a good way to like preview fonts. But like I said, I don't really use Typekit. I use Skyfonts, which is a part of fonts.com. And I use that because I use Font Explorer, Does anyone use this?
Is this a free download?
It is.
Okay.
It's free for a month, and then you pay for a subscription after that. So I pay about $20 a month, and I use Font Explorer. This is X, and there's been 4 previous versions before this. But now everything's kind of baked into the cloud. And so if I want to kind of set up a Rogers Game Center Live project here, and so for that, I can, oh, there's also Google fonts too, which are like totally free. And you can go through all these fonts and download them and use them as you please, or they work with Sky fonts too. So if you want to add them to like your Sky fonts account, they work in there as well.
Andrew, can you explain like just top line, what's the difference between a standard like, web font compared
Yes.
to a regular, say, font you use for print?
Right. So a web font is something that's been designed by a type foundry specifically for web use. So they're kind of choosy with that. I think most of the popular ones are on there. The Helveticas, obviously Avenue Next, like our fonts, a web font. And it's kind of, if you're developing a font system for your corporation, you always rope in a web font into it. So there's also like sort of a bunch of different uses for it too.
Is it a matter of just say a Gothic, okay?
Yeah.
So you design it, and it's open type face,
Yeah.
and then it's a matter of it's almost like they export it a certain way to make it a web font. I don't really understand that.
Yeah, so it's code.
Yeah.
Like what they do is they just like any other font that you shape in Illustrator, it starts out as a sketch, goes into Illustrator, and you create the vector form. You import it into a program like, I think when I did my undergrad, I used Type Creator 3 or something like that, and it just kind of goes through and creates a true type or an open type font face. So it's essentially the same thing. It's gonna live in the CSS of the website. So in your style sheet, you'll just call this. You'll have like a certain code that will go into the type library, and it'll pull it into the website. And a lot of the deals for fonts are based on views per month. So you have the bigger fonts, you probably have like, especially on our properties, you have deals that are worked out where you get millions of clicks, right? And if you exceed that, then you start paying more on your font licensing. So it's a lot like image distribution and things like that. Like that's how these font foundries are getting paid is through clicks and views on the website. You buy a license to view that on the web. And it's kind of like the foundries are working with web browsers to stay up to date with HTML, like all the different iterations and stuff like that. So as code grows on the web, font kind of grows with it. So it's very adaptive.
I remember like 10 years ago when you designed a website, you would always have to be cognizant that, hey, we make sure everybody has Arial, everybody has that, or else it's not going to load up properly.
You had your browser standard fonts, like
Yeah.
the sort of system fonts that are installed on every Windows or Mac computer. And even things such as type rendering have gotten better over the years. Like all the browsers are kind of up to us. Like the reason why things look better on an Apple computer on the web is because Apple demanded that the browsers render the type at a certain level of bit. So like you showed earlier where it had like 8-bit, 16-bit, like Chrome and Firefox, they were like, you want your browsers on our operating system, you have to render the font at a certain level. So like, a couple versions of Windows ago, your font would always look kind of jaggy, right? Like it's because Internet Explorer was really shitty at rendering type. But everything's kind of leveled off since then, and it's more about speed and loading on pages. But I just kind of went through Site Inspire and highlighted a few examples of just a bunch of fonts living together that, you know, that you would see in print and laid out in editorial and on the web. Like 5 years ago, this probably would have been done in Flash, and you know, you wouldn't be able to copy any of the type like that because it would be in a video that they just keep looping through. So Quotes Next kind of cool, like very editorial driven. You know, you got your big bold headline here.
So you know how they say, you know, try to stay away from serif fonts on web. In this case, there obviously as a headline, it works well because it's a lot easier to read, but for body type, it becomes a lot harder.
Yeah, and like since the introduction of web fonts, a lot of the rules that apply to traditional design have kind of made their way to the web and sort of standardized it as an editorial platform. Yeah. And again, like as you know, as you're laying things out, you want to be cognizant of the content you're laying out and what you want to draw attention to and the certain typefaces, how they interact there.
So I guess, for instance, when you look at something on a tablet, which is, I guess, the same thing on the web, you know, you wouldn't change, say, body copy for a magazine is normally a serif, so you wouldn't change that.
Yeah.
But still, it's still legible.
Yeah. Like, and I'll show a tool that's really good at it's actually called Typesetter, and it's a digital typesetter that you can stretch your widths and it adjusts the font accordingly. So as you're working across multiple devices, you know, you're, again, like, just like Wilson said, you want to be cognizant of the screen size that people are generally working on. Like, phones are getting bigger these days, so that's a good thing for all of us, like career designers or content producers. Like, you know, it just makes things easier as we build things that live across multiple devices. So here's another sort of artsy site that's done by the Museum of Contemporary Art in California. But I just thought it kind of, you know, it's very trendy looking, and like this is an image right here, but all of this, you know, you can, like all the navigation, you can highlight. So they're using the same font. It's just what they're doing with this one is it's an image because when it scrolls, it keeps coming back.
Wow.
So they shrink the same image, right? And as you go through, you sort of get like, you know, it's like a live flyer. You know, instead of them doing something that would cost $10,000 to print and distribute on the streets of LA, they can kind of direct everyone to this Tumblr site. And then it gets flooded into the Tumblr community.
And that's just Tumblr? Like that's like...
This is a Tumblr site, yeah.
Template. So it's a template and then they just kind of modified it?
Yeah, totally, yeah. They just went in the back end and, well, front of design. But yeah, it's just, I just thought this was a really cool way of simple typography and imagery coming together, and, you know, something that you might see on, I thought the design was very similar to Urban Outfitters, and when you get like a lot of their catalogs, very, very clean, but that attention to imagery and interaction with type. And this is just a really good example of that living on the web.
Joining in for your...
It's my life.
What?
I told her it was good, so I don't know.
As soon as you got that ring on your finger.
So yeah, again, it's kind of a, you know, you just keep scrolling and it's going through, sort of telling a story, and it's cool because it all kind of relates back to the creation of type and movable type, and now it's living in a digital space. So it's pretty cool.
So last class or 2 classes ago, we talked about grids and all that, right?
Nice.
And just based on that example you showed here, even
Yeah.
though it's very fluid,
Yeah.
you can clearly see there's some grid structure.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about just the grid structure in
Totally.
web and how important that is?
Yeah. So this is typecast.
Yeah.
And let's go. And so this works on a few different grids. And when you're when you're designing body copy and headlines, you want to be cognizant of columns. And so this is a 2-column 40 pixel grid. And it doesn't really make sense to have this size of typeface here. So what I can do is I can go in. Sorry. You can sort of stretch it and see
That's cool.
as you
See what
adjust where that type size makes the most sense. And this is like, you can sign up for free and use this. Like even, I think it's even very helpful if you're designing for print too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's that?
And
What's
it's
that?
giving you the grid size as you scan.
That's cool.
It's, there you go. And you can get in and do text effects. You can adjust spacing. And this also spits out code. So what we're seeing now is a lot of this software has become developer friendly. And it's going from the designer designing it, laying it out in a tool like this, and then sort of working hand in hand with the developer. And the developer can just take this code and pump it right into the CSS. So he's kind of eliminating a step that he'd have to figure it on his own before, and there's that disconnection between designer and developer. But yeah, like it kind of, we went from 3-4 years ago, everybody was designing on a 12-column 960 grid. And in that, again, like you have your columns, you would adjust, it would be a 10 pixel width column in between, and you don't want your type overlapping those columns. But now, because everything's become fluid, like I've just sort of demonstrated, something like this, like your grids are much looser, right? But again, you have to be aware of space and the size and the relation of the title to the body copy and where to draw your attention. Like, a lot of these rules still apply. And if not more, because it's not as rigid as it used to be, right? Everything's gone fluid. So now, like some people might run wild and you kind of have to rein that in, right? And just apply all these tools that, and visual cues that you've developed over your design career.
What's the red or that orange?
So that's a shadow. So you can add
Never
depth
do
to it. Yeah, I was just kind of messing around with it, but yeah, you can scoot the painting there, and then the text shadow. You can change colors.
Oh my god, it's hurting my eyes.
You can go into like a light drop shadow there. It's just a quick demonstration.
Cool.
Yeah. And then you can even grab it in here and adjust that little column in its own. So yeah, thing in like alignment.
So,
How it looks
is
like
there
that.
a way to like, in these softwares, like I know you guys not do everything like responsive, it's like the trend.
That's exactly what this is.
That's
Yeah,
like
that's
this
what
will
this is.
give you the possibility to right away see all the sizes, like.
100%, yeah. So I can go 12 and I can load, like max width on the web right now is 1280 pixels. So that's like a high definition site, like the monitors you guys all use in the studio, these nice 27-inch cinema displays, like that's your optimal viewing for a desktop. And TV, like,
What
you get a
about
lot of
4K?
people.
As TVs become 4K.
Yeah. Again, like a lot of this is vector, right? Like a typeface it's a shape that's going to react to the resolution itself. So one thing that'll always be a constant, like as resolutions get bigger, the type will just react to that space. It's when you get into imagery and like loading web pages, like I don't know if you'll ever see a 4K internet. It just doesn't make sense for speed unless unless data speeds go beyond what they are right now. It just doesn't make sense. you load if something's all shot in 4K on your phone, it's gonna suck the data right out of it, right? So you still want to be, like when you're designing for these things, you kind of want to figure out what and where your audience are going to be and then design accordingly. Like, are we building it as a graphic showpiece, or are we building it for speed and efficiency? That sort of thing. So for Sky Fonts, this is really cool because you can actually you can take the web font and use it in Photoshop. So
There's that testing thing you're telling me about?
yeah, you can do. Here, we'll try Universe. It's a new web font. Okay. That's actually a big deal.
I'm sure it is.
I had no idea because
So why would that be a new web font? How come that wouldn't be created?
Licensing.
long time? Okay.
they were probably just working on like tying up licensing.
Okay.
It's all right because it's kind of blown up and it's just down to money these days.
I guess that's why you'll notice a price difference when you're buying fonts. You can buy it for print, and it's way more expensive than buying one for web.
Right.
Just because of the sizing or something?
Just down to like distribution
Yeah.
and kind of keeping track of it and who's using it and things like that. Yeah, could be any number of things, to be honest. So apparently this one, I don't know, I can add it. So I guess I can add it to browsers. So you can add it to
With these web fonts, it's like it's so important that when we're creating a new brand, a new style guide with fonts, that we make sure that it doesn't just work for print. Kind of make sure you pick something that obviously works for web. And like obviously that's really, really important
For sure.
nowadays, right?
We
Oh,
think
yeah.
about that a lot.
Yeah.
How's it gonna work for web, something that's really small,
Mm-hmm.
readability?
Yeah, again, like legibility is everything, right? And that's why tools like this are just so handy, like this was never available. Like when I started designing, I just kind of had to guess. Like we weren't designing for mobile. Like everything I designed was a rich experience for desktop, and these videos sort of interacting with Flash and 3D. Like I remember one website we built. We put like it was a restaurant site, and we put like $10,000 worth of 3D animation in it. Like you had to fly through the restaurant, like opening video of the website. Like the site's size was like, I think it was like 400 megs. And so, the days of sitting there and watching a preloader go across the screen loading a website are gone.
Oh, yeah.
Because of things like web font.
Yeah.
Like where you load the page and the font's already there because it's all in the code now. And just things are that much more efficient.
So would you say eventually all print fonts will merge into web fonts, right? Like they will all
Yeah, I would think so. Like,
move in there.
some of it just depends on the studio, right? And you might have to actually pay Monotype a sort of fee for them to digitize it and
Yeah.
make it available in there. So if you're a small studio starting out, like
You'll probably just sell the.
you just kind of, you might sell it yourself as like a web font, and then you can install it. Like you're not, so you can build individual web fonts for yourself too. There's programs out there that'll just convert it into a web font for you.
But you don't think that it ever becomes standardized in a sense where, say for example, when you buy a car, I guess all cars nowadays are automatic
Sure.
locks and stuff, but back in the day you had to upgrade and all
Yeah.
that. But you don't think sometime down the road, it's just almost like, hey, when you create a font, it should have a web.
Oh, I think, yeah, totally. Like, especially for monetization, like
Yeah.
if you're trying to make money as a type studio, like a House Industries or somebody like that, like first and foremost, you're probably going to want to get it on the web, unless you have like exclusive licensing deals with broadcasters. Like
Right.
you're creating a custom font to live on, like NFL or something
Yeah. Emily, cause you're still finishing off school, so in school right now.
Emily's not in.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Lucy, Lucy.
Sorry, yeah.
In school right now, do they, in type class,
Yeah.
is there a huge focus on typography on the web or web fonts and all that at all? Or no?
Not a whole lot. I mean, it's took a typeface design course and we just had to make it into a typable, whatever, they didn't make us make it into the web. There's more of a push for like typing motion. It's going that kind of way than worrying about making webhooks and stuff.
Right. I'm just very, very curious because obviously, when we were kind of in school, we started off with, drawing by hand and cutting stuff. And then nowadays, obviously, with everything being so digitized and all that, I'm just curious to see how the educational program kind of been adapting and evolving to cater to that demographic.
I think that in that typeface design course, they took, most people just made a typewriter and a computer and that's what they did. But I cut mine all up with paper, made it like that, but, yeah, everyone's making everything straight, so you computer.
Is all this stuff that Andrew's talking about, are you aware of this kind of stuff, or is this kind
I
of?
feel like people that take more kind of interactive design classes, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't keep up with that as much, but.
Cool.
What are your thoughts on icon fonts? Because I've used them.
They're great.
before.
Yeah, again, like it's,
I really like them.
yeah, and that's something that us as a corporation create.
Yeah.
There are, in here, there are some as well, but they're not as specific as something like that, where
Yeah.
you create that icon set that lives as an EPS, an SVG,
Yeah.
and a type. And it just cuts down on.
Like all the retina.
Yeah, for sure. And,
Right, yeah.
and like I said earlier, that because it's been made, an icon's been turned into a type face, that adjustability across screen sizes is it's like you don't have to adjust, like an SVG will be all right. It's a pixel, it's 1 pixel vector
Yeah.
that just scales, right? But it would take longer to load because those are larger files. Whereas because you have the typeface, it's written into the
Yeah.
code, right? And it just
Yeah.
expand as the page gets bigger within the code and the type.
Yeah, because I was thinking, because I know with the Rogers stuff, everyone's always developing new icons.
Mhm.
When there's a set
Yep.
that's completely, finalized, would it be something beneficial for Rogers?
100%. When it'll cut down on load time on
Yeah.
Rogers.com, on SBU, on Enterprise Business, anything like that. Just like even when, just from a user experience, like it's gonna load the page faster and it'll be a
Right.
consistent look and feel across all devices on any size.
Yeah, and I suppose if there's like a hiccup, it's just one piece of thing to kind of fix that.
For sure,
Yeah,
And it's guaranteed to work in every browser.
yeah. Because I started using it just for like social icons, just to avoid putting like the tiny images, but
Use them wherever you can.
yeah.
Yeah.
no, they're-
Yeah, totally. So here's a way to get the web font onto your computer so you can mock it up in Photoshop. I'm just gonna pick a 5-minute trial. So I don't want to waste one of my 15 monthly downloads. Oh, there we go. So it's added, and I'll see it up here. Just sort of tell me that it's
Up and running.
up and running. And I'll go into Font Explorer.
So Jay, we were just talking about how, how the Rogers brand team is creating a set of logos. And Jessica was just saying how would it be advantageous for us to create that into a font? So if we were to use it online, like how would that work? And Andrew's just saying how it would really be.
And And then the Adobe is just that sort of beast that's been lingering the last 30, 40 years.
So you feel like right now you're using Font Explorer, so I used to use like extensive suitcase, the Fusion and all that.
Yeah.
And then I just found that, at least a lot of us in the studio, I don't think we have a font management program other than Fontbook that we use, right? Do you find this to be
I think
a
it's
lot
the
better
best.
organized?
Because like it shows like kerning, like,
Yeah.
like everything's,
All the details.
yeah, and it's just intrinsically linked with all the fonts in the cloud too. So everything's just kind of this whole fluid system that just works together
Mhm.
too, right?
Yes.
I think it's the best type management.
Yeah.
ways.
You guys don't have, you guys use Fontbook, right?
We only have installed like nuclear font.
There used to be that extensus one
Yeah.
that Christine, you have that one?
There's
Yeah, the
ways that-
suitcase was like from back at.
But in terms of managing projects, because you say, especially on the integrated sales side of things.
We can buy a server license, so you can use Font Explorer Server, which would be something for the entire studio to use, right?
Kind of.
Yeah,
Where-
where licenses.
Yeah, so
That's good.
everyone in the studio can access all the fonts.
At Veneer
right?
Next, make sure we all have the same cuts.
Yeah.
Sometimes, certainly we don't have it, but we're using the
And so
same
that,
source.
like, we create FX promos, right? And if we needed to do print to support it, you could just go into Font Explorer Server, find that file that, whoever your motion designer is that made it, and I can extract those for print. I can extract those for web.
It's all consistency with some
Okay, so one person creates the font suitcase, and then everyone can just pull from it within the Font Explorer Server.
You find like even Gotham on like the shopping channel, like there's so many different cuts. There's HTF Gotham, there's blah 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 blah. Like if we're able to somehow we're pulling from the same source, like I know Keith was complaining the whole time. Like I think it was a couple of years ago when we used Helvetica New, and there's a million different Helvetica News, and we all had different cuts, and it wouldn't load. He's like, we gotta just delete all the ones that that don't work.
It's so versatile, man. Like, there's so much you can do with it,
Let's
right?
talk to Dwayne or something, see if we can
Yeah.
potentially set it up.
And then you can set it on different colors. Or,
Mhm.
there's a lesson in what not to do right there.
like it.
It's nouveau. Nouveau trash.
I have a question. Like lately, we've been doing a lot of those e-blasts, and I don't know exactly what program they use, but we're being forced to use Arial like over and over again, even though we are
Yeah.
at Veneer Next now. So is there a way, like, I know it won't happen right now, but like in an ideal world, there would be a way to get, like, let's say HTML emails with custom fonts that is not an image? Like, would such marvel happen someday?
It's possible.
I think that right now we're a little bit limited by the email deployment system.
Yeah,
that
right.
Veneer
It's
goes
that.
into.
Yeah, it's that, and unfortunately, and this is something we ran into with the email signature
Yeah.
site that we built,
Exactly.
is that email clients are shit. Like, there's
Yeah.
one good one, and no one never uses it. It's Thunderbird, like, and it's more geared towards visual and like kind of getting
To
those.
look good, yeah.
And like, it's something we have to do, but like, ask yourself in your personal Gmail account, like, how many times do you, like, maybe, unless you see J. Crew 30% off on Wednesday, you're not paying attention, right? Like, so it's just kind of, they're almost, you sign up for them to probably get 5% off of the purchase. and
Yeah.
You just kind of leave it in your
Yeah,
Gmail.
it goes
Like,
automatically to the trash.
yeah, and even, you see new email clients now, like Google's Inbox, which is kind of streamlining email, and it's sucking out like all the extra crap you don't need and just sort of filtering things
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah, it's
Someone
kind
like
of
my
like
mom
how
who's
browsers
retired,
work.
she probably goes through
Yeah.
every email blast she gets. Shit.
That's exactly what she means.
where browsers were before, how, before web fonts, it's sort of
Yeah,
that
exactly.
type of an issue, right?
Okay.
Now, you've got all these Outlook platforms, and they're not all on the same page like the way web fonts now are.
Okay.
It's kind of similar to that situation. That's why there's that limitation.
Mail client, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
It's frustrating for
right?
sure.
Yeah, because it's very limited, and that's
I
always,
know, it's
like,
not
we,
good.
like, everyone does email blasts and
Yep.
sends them out, and they're always, like, you always find that challenge of, like, yeah, it's either a stack of images, one on top of each other, or there comes the point that it becomes Arial or Times New Roman, or, like, the basics.
It's all they support.
Yeah.
Like if you look at, if you have Adidas and you get their email blast, most of the visual type
Yeah.
elements in it
It's
are images.
Yeah, exactly.
And everything's
Then
just body
the
code.
browser blocks them because they might be a virus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, email is a communication tool, not a marketing tool, right?
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Leave it to advertisers to
Sabotage.
turn it into something. Some people like it and
Yeah.
it serves a purpose for the majority or whatever. But, it's a good question. I don't know. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe in another 5 years, we'll move on to some sort of other communication, right? Like even look at how much we communicate now via text, like Snapchat, WhatsApp. Like I would rather see different type brought into that, and then again, you're kind of interrupting the communication process, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm just trying to talk back and forth with someone, I probably want it to look the same and not be as convoluted, right?
It's not magenta font.
Messenger era.
True.
Yeah, most of it, I think, like type really comes alive when it's used to either get you somewhere, in a wayfinding system, or in art, like Yvonne's beautiful piece over there.
And scissors.
But we were saying that the rips almost look like, part of the
We thought that was
overall
by
layout.
design.
It was.
Totally was.
Sell it, man.
No, it is.
Any other questions? Is there anything I missed that you guys would like answered? No?
We know where you.
Yeah.
We know where you know.
Yeah, if there's anything further.
That was awesome,
we'll
That's
just
awesome.
kinda-
That was really good.
Shank.
Margaret, I know we didn't really talk much about on-air and broadcast stuff in terms of using typography. Do you want to share some insight on typography and on-air? Just a little bit, doesn't have to be.
So usually what happens on air is a lot of the time, because it's played off the LED screen or whatever, we find that a lot of the stuff you guys do for print, which is nice and thin and sophisticated, doesn't really translate that well. On air, so a lot of the time, we have to use a thicker font. Some colors don't work as well on air as well. Some reds, color combinations that work really amazing in print don't always work out. Same with web for television.
That's Roger's red.
The Rogers red, like there's a different color for on air as opposed to print.
Oh, is that really?
Even in web, the Rogers color is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you find that, back in the day, obviously with television
Your monitor settings.
and on-air, it was more of a visual and image-based, right? Just because of, just TV in general and how you're watching it. You find, more so now that, typography is being incorporated a lot more, not just in terms of informational basis, but in terms of graphically.
Oh, for sure. It's more like a texture. It's used throughout animations. We're working on some projects right now that we're incorporating a lot of font. It's communication ideal, but the fact that you can animate it, it can have a lot of personality and tell a story, just the way it moves. And,
Yeah, you have a lot of samples on Vimeo and YouTube with kinetic typography.
Yep.
So where they just use purely typography. When you see those samples across web banners, even music videos.
Mhm.
So type itself can be really strong and deliver that message.
yeah, it's not just communication. It
Yeah.
has a lot of personality. It has a texture. It has a shape. You know, sometimes we don't even like read it, misspell and stuff.
Yeah, we've come across a lot of like templates where everything's misspelled. No one's really focusing on the type, they're just on the image, so
Right.
we always need another set of eyes to just catch that.
In terms of practicality, I know you work a lot on those on the promos, and you guys are storytelling through type, either be like Tour de France, be like 21 stages, blah 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 blah. So in terms of practicality, how do you find on air where you have that split moment to get their attention, but at the same point, you don't want the type to live too long because there's other footage and other stuff you have to capture. How do you find that balance in terms of making sure it's used properly?
It's a totally different medium, like you're
Okay.
saying, like we love type, but it's different for print. Like the person looking at the type has time with print to absorb it, with on air you have like 2 to 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So we do have to approach it a bit differently.
Yeah, we do have a lockup where we typically go to, and that's been set early on. But we try to tell the viewers where to go, like time, date, and network. So that's our pretty much our lockup for
Yeah.
call to action, if you will.
Yeah, and that brings it back because we talked about 2 classes ago about hierarchy. So
Yeah,
obviously, because you don't
really.
have a lot of time, you really got to make sure that, okay, this is the main thing I want to talk about. Make it 1, 2, and sometimes you don't even have enough time to have number 3. So that's when a lot of times, especially when we do things, even on print, there's too much information, and we try to obviously cut information out because you won't even be able to absorb it all.
And we find that too, like we try to keep things consistent with print and web, and things like print, you can have more information, whereas on air, we don't really have the luxury of putting all that information. Like the viewer who looks at something for 3 seconds is not gonna, catch all the extra sentences that you guys have in your print ads. So we really have to pick the hierarchy, like what do you want this to be? Is it driving to the website? Is it just the name of the show? Is it the time? Like we have to really prioritize what we want to focus on.
Because that back page is almost like us, for print, it's almost like a billboard.
Right.
You
Yeah,
really
exactly.
only have
Yeah.
2-3 seconds driving, and that's really the same amount of time you have on your back plate. Cool. Thanks, Mark.
No worries.
Really, so this is the last class. I was gonna play whoever wanted to watch Helvetica movie, but I think it's getting a little bit late. But I can send that to you all if you guys want to watch again. So really, this 4-course, I really wanted to make sure there were some key takeaways. It wasn't just something that you guys came, did a few exercises and that was it. Because I wanted this to be something for you guys, something that you guys can learn, practice it, day in and day out, and actually, try to teach our other colleagues that couldn't make it.